Hello and welcome to Alabama Football's 2022 Offensive Scheme Review. I am your guide on this journey, SEC StatCat, Clark Brooks. So in this video, we're going to sum up this offense with 3 words to go over some tactical changes that Bill O'Brien instituted in his 2 years in charge of this scheme, as well as the core run and pass staples. Now, to sum up this offense, if you were to ask 10 different people, you could probably get 30 different words to describe Bill O'Brien's offense this past season at Alabama. You could have some sour fans, you could have some people hone in on the next level thinking he did, but for me, I want to keep it a little bit more civil. And the first word that comes to mind is formational. So in terms of alternative formations outside of base sets, so whether it is empty, bunch, or stack sets, Alabama beat the SEC average in all 3 respects in both usage and efficiency. Yards per attempt and success rate, both well over the SEC mean. So that should really tell you, just on a down-to-down basis, how much he helped create opportunities, especially for the pass game, because that leads us into our second word, aerial. Now, you don't really want to think about that when it comes to Alabama in terms of all snaps. Overall, they had the 4th highest pass rate in the SEC with a 55% clip. But when looking at our meaningful minute sample, so that is 18 points or less, leading or trailing, they shot up over 60% to the 2nd highest in the SEC. None of the Steve Sarkisian years did that, but both of Bill O'Brien's offenses topped that clip back-to-back seasons. Moreover, it was really concentrated on later downs. No SEC offense in meaningful minutes had a higher pass rate than Alabama's 88% clip. There were 1 or 2 teams in the 80s, and that really translated to even on 3rd and short. With only 3 yards or less to gain, only 2 SEC offenses had a passing clip in the 50s. But then we'll go into our third word, elusive. And now you can think of that with Bryce Young's magician skills, and that is obviously apparent. His pressure to sack ratio was top 4 in the SEC and top 25 nationally. His adjusted net passing yards per attempt, which is like yards per attempt, but it puts a little bit more weight on touchdowns, sacks, and interceptions. Only Will Levis had a better clip within the SEC this past season than his 6.7. And when looking at broken plays, we all know what a broken play is. Basically, any time the play does not work out in rhythm, that is signified as broken. Well, he had the most broken attempts in the SEC. He had the most completions on broken attempts in the SEC. He had the most yards. He had the most touchdowns with 7. That more than double the next closest guy in line. So again, that should just really tell you how tough he was to hone in on and bring down. And speaking of explosive run rate in general, only Auburn topped the Crimson Tide in our meaningful minute sample. Of course, Jahmyr Gibbs had a large part to do with that. He was himself top 50 in terms of elusive rating by Pro Football Focus, and he himself helped bring about a lot of big gainers in the ground game. Believe it or not, Steve Sarkisian and Bill O'Brien are 2 completely different play callers. Though both have professional experience, one has a much higher preference in having balance between run and pass elements, using a lot more at-snap and pre-snap motion, and going about it that way, as opposed to just leaning on a few core pass patterns or staples to get things through. Moreover, Steve Sarkisian, his last year in Tuscaloosa, he had a plus 50% gap scheme run share, and this past season, Bill O'Brien, 71% zones. So a higher concentration on zone blocking, either from personal preference or from Alabama's inability to execute those plays. So excluding pin pulls, they would see on some full blocks on zones or some pin pull bases towards the perimeter. Alabama pulling plays each of the last 2 seasons finished with a sub 30% success rate. That is inexcusable considering the talent level the Tide have and the quality of coaches they have at their disposal. So moving forward with Tommy Rees in charge, it remains to be seen if Alabama can recapture its physicality with those old school classics like power, counter, buck sweep, or if it continues to lean into zone avenues with a little bit more opportunities on either side of the formation with read aspects and RPOs. Again, taking to the skies helped buoy a lot of this offense's down-to-down operations. But look, this is still a Nick Saban joint. The run was sought to be established, especially on first down. So in our meaningful minute sample, despite a 60% overall pass rate, 52% of first downs turned to the ground. 5 of their most 6 rep concepts in these situations were runs. So that's inside zone slam read, inside zone bluff or split zone read, outside zone read, and then off tackles. So inside zones, outside zones, all of them finished with a below 50% success rate. So it should not shock you that each of the last 2 years, Alabama has struggled to get decent gains to start a set of downs. A below 43% success rate each of the last 2 years. I already mentioned that you could usually use those gap schemes as a scapegoat for a reason why things sucked, but with them basically being faded out of the script, you have to point fingers right at the inability to be consistent executing those zone looks to start a set of downs. So yes, gap schemes, a below 30% success rate when pulling linemen each of the last 2 years, but you just have to look at how everything in terms of the run game, which is so freaking inconsistent. So while 2 pass patterns, cross and stick, generated at least 10 targets and finished with at least a 50% success rate, most of the core runs were major disappointments, which resulted in longer distance to gain on second and third downs, which is not a good recipe for success in terms of marching down the field, sustaining drives, and getting points on the scoreboard. So Alabama was the most pass-oriented offense within the SEC on third downs. Higher than the air raid, higher than all the super spreads, higher than LSU. No one came close to centralizing their attack through the air quite like the Tide this past season. Either not trusting their offensive line or running backs to convert short porches, or just an immense high degree of trust in Bryce Young to take care of business. So what were the Tide running on third downs? Like in years past, a high degree of mesh. Trails, like last year, also showed up. They were the only pass concepts to generate at least a dozen targets in our meaningful minutes. And both of those helped buoy the down-to-down returns, seeing a plus 54% success rate. Of the 4 or 5 remaining pass staples on third downs in our staple, none of them generated a plus 45% success rate. So that is cross, spacing, spot, dagger, and dag, usually coming from the Tulane double read concept opposite shock. But when behind the chains, you still saw most of those show up in addition to sail, traffic, and corners. All 61 reps behind the chains for passes, and then you only saw 3 checkdowns. So Bryce Young was basically operating the concept as designed. And even though there was a reduced return on investment in terms of just because they had a higher degree of difficulty, having more opportunities behind the chains, it was still an okay result, all else considered. A lot of hodgepodge, just throwing a lot of unique looks in those down and distance situations to try and convert. But all in all, definitely a much more pass-heavy approach on third downs than in years past under Bill O'Brien. Now, that's some of the macro changes from Bill O'Brien, from Steve Sarkisian, but now it's time to talk about the nitty-gritty, the concepts themselves. Now, I already mentioned we had a shift from gap focus to more of a zone focus, so it should not surprise you that the classic inside zone slam read was this offense's foundational look. So let's start that up, along with the rest of the core run concepts. The inside zone slam read, one of the most basic plays in all of college football, but it was still a foundational look for the Bill O'Brien attack this past season. So it is first down. I will tell you, most offensive coordinators will tell their quarterbacks when it is a too high safety look, especially to start a set of downs, and the box count is vacated, just hand that sucker off when you had a read aspect, either RPO or just straight read option. So technically this guy's our read guy, and it looks like it's going to be cover 2 man because how he follows Latu in from the formation. But these guys are going to be back, locked up. It looks like he's going to be running step with our running back. But again, it's going to be 6 versus 6 in the box. And then when you give 1 to our running back, that gives us an advantage. So when these guys have to come up and rally, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 yards before contact. So and that's usually what you like to see. So we'll let it play out here, and you can just see here's our play side zone combo block. Guy goes away. Good awareness from our center to go up to the second level and get the linebacker with Latu pulling our other linebacker out of the box. So again, it's just a hat-on-hat situation. We get a seal, and boom, there's our hole right down the middle. Again, with the 2-deep safety look, it kind of nullifies the read aspect. It should be just a key. Go ahead and just take what you can get, especially with Milroe being a backup quarterback in this instance. Yeah, he's not going to be the main driver of this offense. Let's get it to Mr. Gibbs. So Gibbs hits that hole, and with his speed, he gets 12 yards before contact. So all in all, a fairly simple play. This is a rep without RPOs. Basically, in our meaningful minute sample, 75% were with RPOs. But both had over a 50% success rate. It's just the ones without RPOs only 3.4 yards per attempt versus ones with RPOs with a 5.1 yards per attempt. So fairly simple idea. And it was the foundational run look for this Bill O'Brien offense. So here's another example of the inside zone slam read, this time with an RPO. Since RPOs had a vast majority of the reps in our sample, they basically reflected a lot of the down-to-down results. So all in all, on the season, this concept was much more of a plotting type of concept. Only 8 carries of 10-plus yards. 4 of those suckers were against UL Monroe and Vanderbilt. Not too bad, not good defenses whatsoever. And the last 2 in garbage time in a meaningless bowl game. Nonetheless, since they fall outside of our sample, I wanted to draw them up because they were a rare example of explosive play. So looks like 11 personnel. We got a little bit of a tunnel screens action towards the top of the screen, and otherwise it's going to be really good jobs from our guards to be able to reach at the second level with everyone else doing their job. So collapsing safety has an opportunity to make this play, but it's a good job from our back to get north and south from a cut and make him miss. So we'll watch it play out here. Again, we get a little seal right to the second level, seal right to the second level, and occupy him. So great job from our offensive line to occupy, and you can see this linebacker basically held his gap integrity and forced the handoff. So get outside, drive him outside the ball, make the safety miss, we get the first down. So 2 plays later, they do it to the other side of the formation, but just a straight inside zone read. So this is an example. Well, Milroe is a rushing threat to help give us extra numbers. So you can see right away, we'll get lined up. We have 6 defenders in the box, and we then have 7 offensive players with our we have 8 offensive players with our 6 blockers and 2 potential keepers. So with that, we have a numbers advantage with the 3 deep safeties. He is going to be our read guy, and everyone else is going to do what we just did on our recent play, combo up towards the next level, working play side. So again, this safety has an opportunity to make this play, but because of this wrinkle, we're going to have a crack and force corner to make the tackle. Now, this is a interesting wrinkle. Some teams do this. You see this a lot in the NFL. You want to see cornerbacks make more plays in space because, on average, they are not as good tacklers as safeties. So, really good wrinkle here from Bill O'Brien to call for a crack, and it does just enough to occupy him, even though he's coming ahead of steam. It just throws off his angle just enough, and once we do, we then bounce to space, and we get a rare explosive carry from this look. The inside zone bluff read or split zone read, it came next on the script for this Alabama offense. But like the slant read, it wasn't too explosive. Only 10 attempts over 10 yards on the entire season. And as you can see, our first example falls well outside of our parameter. Another garbage time rep. But I did want to draw it up because it was one of the more cleaner reps of this on the season. So a lot of teams using this trips tight bunch formation. With the running back to the side, it does scream duo dive or play side toss. But when it's offset, a very common look is split zone read or, this type of action. So at the point of attack, we're going to have our typical zone flow. Combo, then up to the second level. These 2 are responsible for that nose and that linebacker. We're just trying to reach and secure our backside with this linebacker being the conflict defender to either, wrong arm and force a spill or stay outside and keep outside integrity for a potential quarterback keep. But, this is Ty Simpson. He's not so much of a keeper. It's probably going to be a give. But either way, it's a really good job to get a seal here from our left tackle as we then get a wash and this linebacker kind of being out of position. We then hit a cutback lane for a big gainer. So, it's not the cleanest job on the front side, but they basically do their job. It's just, a wide open run lane does present itself based on how the defensive lineman stunned out of the way and how this linebacker doesn't necessarily flow with the rest of the play. So you can see his head is up, reading this guy as our split flower is coming against the grain. So, he does this in theory. He's going to be a personal protector or credit that cutback line, like I said. So if that was then washed completely and we needed an alley, you could potentially do that. But again, on this play, it's going to be a seal here and a wash, and that is where we're going to hit our hole because this guy's going to keep peeking this far out. So you can see washing down inside, getting our seal, hitting that crease, and using our speed to make the difference on this rep. Here's another example of the inside zone bluff read, this time with an RPO. So in our sample, 56% of those plays used RPOs, and they really had a massive effect, buoying the output. On the 17 reps in our meaningful minute sample, without RPOs, only a 17.7% success rate. Just not what you want to see whatsoever. So when you saw on our opening graphic how the concept itself had a 40% success rate, that should really tell you how nice RPO looks performed. So here's an example using orbit motion, looping motion behind the backfield. There were also a handful of examples using shoot motion, but only a 30.8% success rate using that. So again, let's focus on what worked best. RPOs. So this is not necessarily the best job up front because this is not necessarily a great situation blocking wise. He's going to be firing against the grain. He's our split flower. Everyone else working play side. That is a hard reach ask. That's a hard reach ask. And that then leaves this linebacker basically untouched. Center will work our nose, and that's also a kind of a hard landmark for our backside guard to then work towards our linebacker. And you'll see here how the aggressive stunt up front kind of messes with things, but essentially our right guard essentially is not going to touch anybody to start this play, and he's only going to luck himself into a late engagement block. But I already mentioned on our previous example, if we can get a backside seal and our backside split flower does his job, it doesn't necessarily matter what happens here because a new lane is formed. And yeah, you will see again a linebacker will take himself out of the play over pursuing, and you'll see another linebacker just not able to make a play, and you'll see a third linebacker being warded off. Either way, it's a really good explosive rep from Gibbs. Again, all in all, on the season, only 10 reps over 10 yards. So we'll let it play out here. It's a really hard ask up front. You'll see how the back end adjusts to that orbit motion. Split floor on Mr. Perkins. Linebacker's going to over pursue. But you can just see how that aggressive wash almost forces more lateral movement than what we would have liked on this inside zone look. But because of that, we then get our wash, and there is our new hole. So that is what Gibbs then takes. And luckily enough for us, he moves out of position. But again, that leaves this guy untouched. That is bad news, Bears. He has an opportunity to make the play. Luckily, he does not. But because how our right guard kept that lateral trajectory and didn't engage with anybody, he then can at least nick this linebacker as Gibbs can make this guy miss and then get towards the edge for an explosive gain. So not exactly how you draw it up, but one of the rare explosive reps from this concept. And we can see it again on the backside how it all falls out. A little bit more lateral movement than you would like, but still we get a wash. Eventually a snake, an over pursue, and a missed tackle from the split flow action. The outside zone read, it was the most incendiary run for this offense in meaningful minutes. Of course, that should be apparent by the 10.1 yards per attempt, but a lot of big runs. So this is going to be an example of an 81-yard carry. Of course, you also had a 58-yarder against Utah State, a 72-yarder against Arkansas, a 25 and 37-yarder against Texas A&M, and a 26-yarder against Tennessee. A handful of big runs from this look. Of course, when you have someone like McClellan, when you have someone like Gibbs, who are speedy backs and are really, really good attacking the edge, why not lean into that with outside runs? So this finished as the third most rep concept in meaningful minutes for this offense. All in all, 22.2% explosive run rate, over a fifth of these attempts on the season, not in just our meaningful minutes, but on the season, went for at least 10 yards. On volume, that is 12. So we have a pre-snap shift here. You know, that was a fairly consistent aspect from Bill O'Brien. Pre-snap motion, pre-snap shifts, get the defense going, but we are working our outside zone action away. So we're just trying to reach laterally on the adjacent gap away and leading an untouched edge defender as our read blocker. And he raced down hard. You then, in theory, could then keep it. But of course, you know, that wasn't really Bryce Young's game. We also have a tunnel action towards the top of the screen, which you could absolutely say could have been targeted based on the alignment of the safety being nowhere near there and the linebacker peeking. But still, we're going to take our speed to the field, and this is going to be a really, really good rep from McClellan. So, again, not necessarily looking to get vertical push. It's all about reaching. So, a decent amount of our linemen are in the backfield, but we are working hard trying to get at chicken wing and reach our man. So, there's our key reach. Latu then gets on his man. The only one left untouched is that corner, and I mentioned in another video, a lot of people want to force corners to be the last man of defense and tackle because on average they're usually the worst guys. But we snake up inside from our seal here and our seal here, and since he's a little slow to come back around and make the play, we then can cut up and race towards the end zone. Here's another example of the outside zone read, this time using escort motion, shoot motion. So that is a growing tactic across all football. So you're just using functional jet motion to create an additional gap on the other side of the formation. So, you know, you'll see teams use this to set up tunnel screens like on this RPO. Sometimes do stuff like that on counters, stuff like that on split flows, but it's all interesting, different ways to modernize that type of stuff. So speaking of split zone actions, 8 outside zones had split flows. That was basically for 49 yards, but only 3 of them worked. So suboptimal success rate. But here we are, shoot motion plays, an additional 8 reps using that. All of them had tunnels away, and it generated 2 explosive runs, and of those 8, 4 of them occurred in this game against Texas A&M. So it was fairly more of a matchup type of aspect here, because the other 3 were just against Vanderbilt. So yeah, not necessarily something you would see every single week, but all in all, this was a very, very good rep. I already mentioned earlier, this is one of the big gainers on this rep. This is the 37-yarder. So we'll use our shoot motion away. It then brings in our corner just a little bit. That then will help our leverage on the perimeter. But up front, you're not trying to necessarily blow your guy off the ball. It's all about a lateral reach towards the perimeter. You then get the edge man reached and him reached, and it's a race towards the sideline. So we'll watch it play out here. Again, getting pushed back, that's not necessarily the biggest point of emphasis. And I should also mention it is a read option after all. This end man on the line of scrimmage is untouched because he's in theory going to be too far away from the play. And if he wanted to sell out down the line of scrimmage, then, well, in theory, our quarterback should then keep it in attack space. But this is just an easy give opportunity. Gibbs is very patient watching this play develop because it looks like edge is going to keep our integrity, so we're just going to keep washing him out, so then that creates a seal. So then our next read comes inside. We got to watch what our guard is doing. Our guard, oh goodness, great. He then passes that interior off to our center who we get a seal, and then he's able to get up to the second level. That is where we want to see. We can see him throttle down. Once he then gets up to the second level and that seal is in place, that is our new hole. He puts his foot in the ground, gets north and south, and then we had another lineman. So this is our right tackle. Since he didn't really engage anybody, he just kept going upfield, and eventually he finds himself in Forrest Gump land, where he's able to make the difference, being all left alone. duo dive, hard-nosed gap scheme. It rounded out some of this offense's most repped runs. In meaningful minutes, though, a fairly even split with and without RPOs. 10 with, 12 without. But those 10 with, like a lot of other looks, buoyed their returns. A 70% success rate on an 8.7 yards per attempt. But yes, this is an example of just a basic, no-nonsense duo dive. I mentioned in an earlier video that this concept is really popular from tight bunch formations with the back aligned. You're getting north and south, and you can see right away at the point of attack, we're going to have 3 blockers on the perimeter versus 2 defenders. All in all, yes, you have 5 offensive linemen against 3 defensive linemen. So, yes, it's going to be a fairly nice rep from the duo dive. This one's going to go for 28 yards early in the ballgame here against poor old Austin Peay. So, on the year, only 5 duo dives went for 10-plus yards, and 3 of them were in this game. So, yeah, they really did beat up on poor defenses. But, some common RPOs you would see would be tunnel screens, double slants, pop passes down the seam, all hitches, fades on the outsides, slants on the outside. So nothing crazy, but there was a decent amount of versatility to keep defenses on the toes. If they overloaded the box, there was something on the outside that could win right away or explosively downfield. So again, we're going to have down blocks, double, snake back on the safety, leave our linebacker untouched. We're reading him. Again, if he's going to try and beat us at the hole, that's when we're going to try and bounce. But if he's going to remain flat-footed, we're going to go north and south and get what we can get. This is not necessarily a next-level type of play, old-school football play, but you can see perpendicular dig. We're working towards that play side action, and you can see right away how we have a kick out and a seal. In engagement there, we're going to have a very, very nice opportunity with the nearest defender to make the play untouched is this safety, and he's a hell of a far way away. So hat on a hat, we then bounce, like I said, untouched linebacker. He goes this way, and we just go where there's vacated void of the field and get a big gain. Pin pull action, the one exception within the Bill O'Brien's the last 2 years where you pull somebody, you can find success. On the year, roughly 52% success rate in meaningful minutes. That's what you like to see. Over half of these reps looked much better than power encounters, which failed overly. So this orbit motion with 11 personnel base set, swinging around, functionally creates a nub set. So from nub sets the last couple of years, it has been a tactic to have an RPO towards the field and run action towards the boundary. So sometimes you'll see this with buck sweep with both guards pulling, but you also see it with base action or pin pull action in my scene with down blocks with guards and centers pulling towards the perimeter as the trapper and lead blocker wrapper rule. So in zone scheme, some people call this folds, but I signify this as a completely other concept just so I can have it more broken out. But with this guy pulling around, that then makes this fellow our key defender for the pass, and our edge is untouched in the read game in case we want to have a quarterback keep. But right tackle will snake away. Very good job from our right guard to prevent penetration here. Again, with our center pulling, instant penetration would doom the play. So if he doesn't make his block, this play is doomed. So he does his job. And again, with those 2 down blocks, trap and wrap, we kick out our corner. We then scoop out this linebacker, forcing a really tough read from this safety. He ends up over pursuing, and then with him over pursuing, we then go in that gap between our 2 pin pullers. So we'll let it go out here. You can see untouched edge defender, forces the give. 2 linebackers flowing towards that swing screen action, so that should give us pretty good numbers opportunities. You can see our down blocks here. He's going to kick out, snake out, and root out, over pursue, and that's where we're going to go. So again, pin pulls, the rare exception of this offense to produce gap schemes that could not only produce explosive gains like this, but down-to-down consistency. All in all, on this season, the base read produced a 25% explosive run rate. A quarter of its reps went for 20 yards or more. So that should definitely tell you how effective it was. In addition to bluff reads or split zone reads in this scheme, straight split zones showed up on occasion. So only 13 reps on the year, and 6 of them used this fake end-around action to facilitate some eye candy. It only showed up in 5 games and was most featured against Austin Peay, but nonetheless, it did finish among this offense's most successful looks in meaningful minutes. And this is the lone explosive carry from the season. So I already mentioned tight bunch formation, back away. It is very common to do split flow action, but if the back was on this side, north-south duo dive and tosses towards the perimeter are also common. But either way, the split flow, tight end's going to fire against the grain, take care of that edge. Really good job from our left guard to occupy this nose tackle. As you'll see, this linebacker's coming, and it forces a lot of pressure on our center right guard combo, but he eventually gets washed, picked up by our guard. Center goes to the second level with our right tackle occupying that edge and our left tackle going towards the second level. Eventually, our center is able to get up to this linebacker and put a hat on a hat. So really good rep overall from the straight split zone. So you'll see there, really good awareness from this combo and a really good athletic play to ensure that there is no defensive penetration. As then we get up to the second level, we get our seals pushed away, and there is our hole with basically only this guy an opportunity to make the play untouched. He guesses wrong inside, and we go to space, and Gibbs gets an explosive touchdown. Now it's time to take things to the skies, and let's draw up Alabama's core pass patterns from this past season, including trails, mesh, cross, corners, and a few other looks. This year, with an 8.1 yards per target and a 48% success rate, it was still effective more times than not, especially off of play action. So in our sample, 16% used play action, and that success rate climbed over 70% with a double-digit yards per target. So those definitely buoyed our return. So orbit motion here, we've seen a few other plays use this in our sample, using that behind the line of scrimmage. So that's going to force a rotation from the coverage, but it looks like it's going to be a single high zone coverage. So we know if it's going to be a single high zone coverage, unless this safety can then head off this cross, that is where we're going to look. Unfortunately, that is what's going to happen on this play. So our eyes then look towards the backside on our trail route, which is either a backside dig, hookup curl to space, or a bang 8 post. In this instance, it's going to be a hookup curl to space. Outside leverage, basically funneling us inside. We're just going to curl up, and Young's going to deliver a strike. So we'll let you play out here. You'll see how the defense rotates. Get inside leverage. He will cut us off, then leaving that matchup on an island. Throw, strike, first down. So we'll see from the back end. You can see again, safety rotates down to the middle of the field with the orbit motion coming behind. Under over cross. He is held in space, leaving that matchup one-on-one, and there's a strike. So here's another example in our sample using play action cross for an explosive gain. Like our previous example, where it was a rep against single high coverage, this is going to be the same, but as opposed to targeting our one-on-one matchup with the space curl or dig, we're going with the one-on-one vert. So same idea, like I said, single high coverage. And our cross is actually going to pull defenders to where we're eventually going to go. It's going to be a creation, no doubt about it, but still, because of where it's placed, our guy has first dibs on it, and it's going to be an explosive touchdown. So pre-snap motion, pulling in Latu. We've done this on a few type of ideas, but insert play action, why insert play action? Gets the box defender's attention, looking for some type of power gap scheme to take advantage, and we're running our under-over cross away. I should mention most of Alabama's crosses worked left to right, and their most popular pattern, basically 22% of all cross plays this year, was a leftward cross with an inverted smash combo to this side of the formation. So a normal smash combo is a corner and hitch inside out. You're just swapping the route responsibilities around to where he works the flat and he gets vertical. Still a two-man high-low read outside of the numbers. So that was their favorite pass pattern. But again, this is just a simple max protection idea of taking a one-on-one opportunity with the middle of the field safety too slow to cap the vertical route. Again, it's not the best ball, but we can see how our man had one. You can see that is a reactionary type of move from that corner, trying to just close space, but it's put towards an area to where Brooks has first dibs on it. Not the best back shoulder, but he still creates it. But you don't like having 3 defenders versus 2 receivers in the area. Otherwise, really, really nice job to come down with this. Stick variations, very noticeable in this offense. Most have been the shock play and with the Tulane tag. So of Alabama's stick variation plays, 39% were this pattern alone. So from empty, you have your 3-man shock, inverted stick with your inside leverage man, hot route towards the perimeter, and number 2 being your vertical stressor. Tulane, independent option routes where the behind man can run an out route or an in, and the stack man has a little bit more verticality. But you can have a little bit more variety there. Obviously, you can have levels, dag, bench. And this play will have dag. So that is a deep dig and a quick out combo. But this video is all about stick variations. And this is an explosive play targeting our one-on-one fade. So it looks like Alabama is facing a single high coverage here from Tennessee. So I'm thinking this is just normal cover 1. And with the middle of the field safety a little bit frozen here by Latu, we then hit a very nice fade here. So we'll watch it play out. You can see a little bit of a dead leg from our trailer here, kind of giving away it's an option route. But again, we're talking about stick. Little press coverage. We get our window. This corner, who could potentially rob us from the outside, he's held in space from this quick hitch. And with our safety eyes towards the middle of the field, there is no help over top, and it's a great ball from Young. So all in all, very, very good concept on the year for this offense, and its second most targeted pass pattern, delivering a 52% success rate when targeted. Here's another example of shock Tulane against Tennessee. I should mention, Tennessee, they faced a decent amount of stick variations from this offense. 10 different reps. That was the most. And then had Texas with 7 and Vanderbilt with 6. But of the 5 explosive targets, 2 of them were against the Volunteers. And like I mentioned, we're going to have another example of targeting the number 2 slot fade against single high coverage. So like on our previous example where we had 1 robber, middle hook defender, this can be an example from Tennessee bringing 5 guys, leaving everyone else in man coverage except for that 1 single high safety. And like our previous example, he's going to be held to the middle of the field. And our number 2 receiver running that slot fade will get outside leverage. And even though it's going to be a slightly underthrown ball, a great effort to create a opportunity for him. So all in all, sticks were featured on basically 10% of this offense's plays in the season, 1 out of 6 pass patterns included a stick variation. And like I said on our previous example, 39% were of this shock 2-lane concept with the dual option route toward the bottom from stack with the inverted stick. So, yeah, again, very simple. Speed hitch keeps this corner up in space. Safeties towards the middle of the field. We lose the defense lose leverage, and we just give them an opportunity to make a play in space. So 52% success rate on the year. Not something that usually got explosive gains just by the very nature of the design, but still, against Tennessee, it was awfully productive and almost helped them come away with the victory. Here's another rep of shock 2-lane, this time against 2 deep shell. So it's going to be a simulated pressure from LSU. Both of these mug guys are going to drop off, and both of these edge guys are going to come. Still 4 guys rushing, 8 guys in coverage. You can't really see, but you can see the shadow right there. So 2 deep safeties, another corner right here. So pretty good idea that we want to attack the shock concept underneath, but Bryce Young's eyes are directed towards the 2-lane dag break towards the top of the screen, and it's going to result in a broken rep. But because how we had natural leverage with this concept, it's going to be open late. So we'll watch it play out here. Again, you can see these guys bail. Eyes are over here. He's in position to take away the in-breaker as well as that in-breaker, so not so great, but we can see because of how this guy has to basically recover from the middle, natural leverage for that type of route. This guy's going to be occupied deep, and eventually on the broken play, you'll see how this corner will eventually pick up our outbreaker, but he himself is going to lose leverage with everything breaking down, and it's still going to be a completion for a first down. So all in all, not the most sexy play. Again, overly targeted underneath with a 52% success rate, only 5 explosive plays on the year, but a very manageable, easy concept to find wins no matter whether it's single or 2 deep. Okay, smash variations, benches, corners, either together or alone, were often paired with Alabama's core pass patterns. 12.5% of Alabama's pass patterns had a form of smash in their design. So typically, if it was this Y bench or Y corner variation, obviously you would have a high-low along the sideline. And depending on how, if you have a single high, the corner drops, or if it's cover 2 and the corner's near the flat, determines your read. Or sometimes if it's man coverage and you have inside leverage, it just seems to be a really nice throw to get a mid-range completion. Speaking of which, 0 explosive gains. So that is 0 targets that resulted in a 20 or more yard gain for this offense. That's not necessarily what you want from from a core pass pattern. Moreover, in meaningful minutes, a very modest 44% success rate and 6.7 yards per attempt. That is just mid as you can get. But still, this is a fairly good rep. Opposite of one of Alabama's core trail concepts. We'll talk about the dangles and all that type of stuff at another time. But again, just to highlight how corners provided fairly easy reads and a moderate rate of return in this offense. So there, it's kind of a bodied completion, but you can see here, if he's going to be locked up with our man, who already has outside advantage, basically by like a yard or so, and we're going to have an out-breaking route, that's just extra distance that this linebacker has to cover, and again, advantage offense. Even though it's going to be a somewhat contested catch here, it's a fairly good job, and again, we move the chains. Here is another example of a smash variation being paired with one of Alabama's staple patterns. So inverted smash corners. So you're going to have a flash to the flat, an inverted C corner, and on the other side, like I had in the other video, it is a patented cross. And like I mentioned in the other video, 22% of Alabama's cross plays were this exact pattern. A left to right cross with a high-low corner. So like I mentioned in the other video, in the previous corners video, this is a high-low. You have 1 man, 2 man, and if there's going to be a zone defender in this corridor, you're just going to try and make him wrong. But on this play, it appears to be cover 2 man. That's why I had the green drawn up. These 2 safeties are going to bail back, have deep halves. He's going to be locked up with our linebacker. They're locked up, they're locked up, they're locked up. So right away, the defense does us a favor, hops inside, and plays with that type of leverage. And as you can imagine, since we have an out-breaking route, that does us a massive, massive favor. So it's nothing more complicated than that. Like the other rep, we just have a leverage advantage. We snap outside, and we get a mid-range completion. Lickety-split. So we'll watch it again. You can see how the safety is coming down to get Latu. And that's a really tough assignment coming from depth to try and stop somebody in the flat. But with our corner here, just instantly playing it from the inside and we snapping the route out about 15 yards downfield, it is just really, really nice. So we can see it again from the behind view. Nothing overly complicated about that. Here's another rep of shock Tulane. But speaking of Dag, so depending on how that Tulane double option combo broke, determined how it was categorized in our charting system. So if it was a dig out, that's Dag. Bench. Levels, you get the idea. But still, the Tulane concept was just categorized a little bit differently in our vocab. But most of its reps were paired opposite of Y shock. Not all of them, just most of them. All in all, 15 targets, 2 of them being 20-plus yarders. Definitely most featured, most productive in this Tennessee game. So this is going to be a dig completion to get us back ahead of the chains with a chance to score some points. But we all know how this game ended. Not great for the Tide. So with it being a 2-deep zone, there's another safety here, there's going to be a natural hole in the middle of the field and a natural quick hole along the sideline. So when you have 2 option routes, where do you think you're going to go? To where that linebacker is or further away from him? Where are you going to go? To where there is defensive leverage or where they are vacated? Exactly right. Yeah, you're going to get a deep dig and a quick out. So that's where we're going to go. And since the deep dig is the more advantageous opportunity, that is where Bryce Young's going to go. Pitch and catch. Boom. So the safety tries to recognize it, but you can see he's out leveraged, and it's just a bad setup for the defense right there. So all in all, the DAG concept delivered a 61% success rate in our meaningful minutes sample. Just really good returns for an offense that really found itself in passing situations quite a lot. Here's another example of the DAG concept. This is actually 2 plays later than the previous video. So Tennessee is going to do a 5-man fire zone with a 3-over-3 coverage, meaning 3 underneath, 3 deep, 5 blitzers. So it's going to be a gap between this pass off and this pass off in the middle of the field. You know, it is just a 2-man operation. So in zone coverage, you got to cover a area of the field and not particularly a man. So with the single high safety being too far off from where this dig is going, and this guy basically passing it off, expecting, you know, to take on the outbreaker, it's going to be a wide open completion to a dig here. So nothing really complicated. So like I said, 5 rushers, 1, 2, 3 underneath, 1, 2, 3 deep, and you know the middle of the field safety is way off screen. You'll see our outbreaker and our dig. Watch the communication gap between these 2 guys. This guy is basically going to stick with our outbreaker, and you know, with 2 guys basically covering one route, that leaves the other guy wide open. Needless to say, so nice strike there from Bryce Young to freshman Kobe Prentice. for the second straight year, Trails kicked ass within this offense. 64% success rate in our meaningful minutes sample. So Dangle, we saw in another video, is one of the more popular trails in this offense. Actually, it was overwhelmingly the most popular. So 24 targets for that, only 3 targets for arches. So not so much difference between the two. It's just really where is the middle guy going to break his route. He's going to go in. He's going to go out. So this is also fairly similar to bunch fly choice. You'll see this sometimes. Running motion out of a typical set, but either way, the standard dangle consists of 1 running a drag, 2 running a dig, and then getting 3 running an angle. So our dangle, he's taking place of the number 3 receiver. If it was a normal typical bunch, he'd be over here. So it looks like Texas is in cover 4, 2 deep zone coverage. I mentioned in another video, and football common sense, football 101. Middle of the field is going to be a vulnerability to that coverage. Both of these guys are going to have outside leverage for a deep end breaker, and with this cover 4, this other 4th defender peeking towards this drag route and him occupied by this corner, it's going to be a wide open strike to convert here on 3rd and 6. So yeah, it was a very popular pass pattern last 2 seasons on late downs and when behind the chains to convert. And again, more often than not, it came through for this offense. So even though this Texas route, this angle route is not targeted, it is really fun to see how this linebacker is in skates. Moreover, since how the route kind of pulls him that way, that also creates another throwing lane for this dig to come open. He's not going to hang out underneath and potentially pick it off or deflect it, even though these guys are all back playing vertical leverage. So we'll let you play through. Guys way in skates here, but again, we're going to throw a strike to our mid-range dig, and there you have it. So we'll watch it again from behind the screen view, or behind the ball view. You'll see how he will eye the initial dig. He will be back. He'll just be completely pulled out of space, leaving absolutely no one in that void there. So here's another rep of this pattern, this time towards the dangle side of the formation. So unlike our previous example, we're going to have a single high 5-man blitz, and it's going to result, again, to a dig completion, but just a different type of coverage here. So you can see already it's going to be a pass off. He's going to take him. He's going to take him. And with our dig being matched up with our remaining coverage man, that is bad news bears for our coverage man because he's just out leveraged. Like our previous example that had our corner have advantage on our linebacker who was lined up inside and he broke out. It's the exact opposite. So outside leverage against an in-breaker, not good. And the middle of the field safety is too far off to make a difference on the play. But again, all in all, 64% success rate from trails, most of them dangles from this season. But I just really like how they are designed to pick on linebackers and 2 deep shells, single high opportunities, 2 high opportunities, and it just gives you a lot of outs, especially when it's paired against a single high-low breaking towards the other side of the formation. So, you could definitely consider this a flood pattern, but for me, definitely a trail. So, all in all, only 1 explosive completion, only 1 20-plus yard completion. So, it was just a very consistent thing to turn to on late downs and when behind the chains for this offense, even though it wasn't necessarily too incendiary. But you can see he's going to pick up the drag, he's going to sit back and then take the angle, and with outside leverage, there's just going to be no one here to stop this dig. And there you have it. Cali mesh or rail mesh has been Alabama's most featured form of mesh the last several seasons. But all in all, the concept group pulled together for 17 featured snaps, 3 explosive completions. It was most featured against A&M and Tennessee, 4 reps each, 75% success rate. So this was a fairly good chunk completion on a broken rep. It appears to be against cover 2. With cover 2, both of our corners are going to have the flat. deep halves. Sorry, he's going to be in the hook curl, middle, with another guy off screen. So it's going to be a good job to not only cap these crossers. So, unlike most forms of mesh where it's the two middle guys running it, Alabama had enough wrinkles to where the outside guy was the mesher on occasion. So he has a corner, and he's going to be occupied by the deep safety, but really good pass off from these underneath routes, and with it being cover 2, our middle linebacker hook defender, he's going to do his exact job. He's going to take away that hook. But because how Milroe can buy some time and manipulate the defense, he's going to be able to find himself in a little void after some improvising. So we'll let you play out. You can see here, boom, the bumper flank cover 2 corner is there to take away the drag. Same on the other side with the swing and the linebacker taking away our other drag. Even though it's off screen, you can kind of see with him dropping back, that's exactly where our hook curl is going to be. So he's going to undercut it. But like I said, after a beat, some improvising, he's able to find a strike in between our zone defenders and get a 15-yard gain. So all in all, nothing too crazy from this concept mesh, but it was one of this offense's most successful and at least worth talking about at the end of the day. Shock Tulane again, but how the Tulane concept breaks is going to be an example of levels. So even though there was examples of levels from trips formations in this offense with typical bench action or corners action, the most common wrinkle or the most common way it showed up within this scheme was on the Tulane break. So another example of Tennessee bringing 5 and having one single high defender with everyone else in man coverage. With our short defender giving us outside leverage, that's where we're going to take it. And boom, it's just going to be an inward completion like that, yak opportunity. This time, our single high safety actually takes away that fade. Like on a previous example or two, running Y shock, especially in this game, that was something that generated 2 explosive completions. So this time, safety takes it away, and with him occupied, it leaves these guys one-on-one with a lot of grass to operate. So we'll see here how this generates an explosive completion. All in all, 4 explosive completions across its 15 targets on the year for the levels concept. So that's pretty dang good. So we'll watch it play out. You can see going deep. He has this man on skates, going to break inside because that's where the leverage is. He's playing a little bit outside. So, yep, we're going to take inside leverage right there. And with that cushion, 2 or 3 yards, that's all we need. Boom, pitch and catch, 20-yard gain. So all in all, nothing too crazy. Again, just another example of how that Tulane concept, that dual breaking independent option route, really kept defenses off balance with a lot of versatility and a way to provide a lot of answers for Bryce Young no matter what the coverage was. All curls, very simple, but it basically nearly a 70% success rate in our meaningful minutes sample. So that is one of the more successful looks within this offense, and it's pretty simple. It had 30 plays as an RPO outlet, 13, and this all curl hitches, 8 of them from empty like this rep, but 20 targets all in all across the season with 1 explosive gain. So we're not going to go over that, but we're going to go over 2 quick examples from this Ole Miss game, basically separated from a few plays from. So we're behind the chains. Defense is playing back. It looks like it's going to be a form of cover 3 buzz from Ole Miss. So 3 deep defenders, 1, 2, 3. Strong safety is going to plug in here. He's going to stay in the flat. Here. So, but you can already imagine with these 2 guys and this short, and we have 2 short routes towards this side. Without this linebacker coming underneath to rob us, we're going to have an opportunity over there to get a completion, at least potentially get us back on track. So we'll watch it play out. And that's exactly what happens. The 2 versus 1, even though he tries to disrupt as much as he can while he is going out to cover the flat, ultimately no one is left to cover our H receiver here as a hook. And even though Bryce Young does a little bit of improvising, stepping up in the pocket to get himself some time, he wasn't really pressured. But just an example of how this play is an easy pitch and catch type of thing. Here is another example of all curls, this time in the RPO world. I mentioned in the other video, the primary way they showed up in this offense was as an RPO route tag. 30 of the 47 featured snaps were in this way. So it looks like it's going to be like a cover 4 type of deal from Ole Miss. 1, 2, 3, 4 deep. 1, 2, 3 underneath. And because of that, we're going to outnumber our underneath defenders. 3-2, because this safety is back, putting this guy in conflict, both in the read game, again, with the zone action going away. Even though Bryce Young really wasn't a keeper too much, his mobility does keep people honest, keep them locked into the box, so he cannot sneak out into the passing lane to where that hitch goes. So with him giving cushion and him being too far away, this is the man we're going to target, and we're just going to get an easy completion for first down here. So all in all, nothing too crazy, but again, around 70% of all curls targeted in meaningful minutes ended in success. Okay, the traffic concept. Fairly explosive based on its limited usage. 2 explosive completions over 50 yards, including this one. So it also produced a 70-yard scramble. So like the Z poker play that we just drew up, where the outside guys working towards the middle, and these guys kind of are working towards the outside a little bit. Same idea. But this time, instead of curling up, we're just going to continue and climb. So this is meant to beat traffic coverage. That is a technique also called cone coverage, where your point man is going to take number 2 wherever he wants to go. They are locked up man on man. And then these guys, I'm going to have first guy in, I'm going to have first guy out, and then we're going to take them man on man. So the issue with that is, with this guy climbing and going where he wants to go and working outside, he's working towards the flat, and then he's climbing and going inside. You can easily find yourself flat-footed like this coverage man does, and it's going to result in an over-the-top type of completion. So we'll let it play out here. You can see, okay, I'm going to take the guy outside. He does. I'm going to take the guy inside. You can see how he kind of peeks up before finding himself even and then leaving with this guy locked up on this outbreaker here. So traffic as is, this was Z traffic because it's the Z receiver doing the climbing. But ordinarily, you can also see this from this fellow doing the climbing, and then you have your outbreakers like that, or like that. By the way, there's a lot of different ways you can draw this up. But yeah, 2 big plays. So we'll see how this comes open again. So you'll watch him. He's going to go in wherever he's going to go. He's going to go outside. He's going to take the first guy in and find himself a little flat-footed and compromised right away. So not too good of coverage whatsoever here. So it almost looks like it's going to be a cross before he just, boom, snaps his feet in the ground and gets vertical. So remains to be seen if Tommy Reese is going to have this element in the offense, but I did enjoy myself seeing this show up occasionally, considering how much trips bunch formations showed up within this offense this year. So I wanted to use the next 2 videos to just go deep into the weeds and really show a couple of effective wrinkles from Bill O'Brien from Trips Bunch. So Trips Bunch commonly is where you saw Alabama's trail patterns. So just to keep defenses honest, he had a few extra wrinkles just to make sure they didn't have things too predetermined or were telegraphing things a little too much. So spacing patterns, curl flat patterns, nothing new, all levels of football, trying to stretch the defense to its horizontal breaking point with curl flat combos. Poker or Hank, the typical pattern, you'll see a middle hook from number 3, flat from number 2, and number 1 running a curl on the outside. But X-Poker Swap, we're going to just completely mess with the orientations of the route to where 3 works the flat, 2 is the outside guy, and our X receiver, number 1 receiver, is then towards the middle of the field. So only rushing 3 here from Arkansas, but we're going to have 4 deep defenders. He's going to have it's going to be like a cover 60 type of thing towards that side of the field. But because of how this guy's going to drop and this guy's going to have a little bit leverage that way, we're just going to have a brief moment of glory right between the hold in the zone, and we're going to get a strike for a fairly decent gain. So it's kind of similar to the traffic concept, which we'll talk about a little bit into the next video. That was definitely a more explosive wrinkle, but nonetheless, it is a very similar idea, trying to pull some of these coverages a little along with swapped responsibilities. So, it's a very weird path here from this curl. It almost looks like he's going to the outside before he snakes back up, but still, because of how there's going to be a fairly decent avenue here, that's where we're going to go with the ball. So, pause, deep, hook curl, underneath. The Texas concept, it averaged 14.1 yards per target in meaningful minutes on the year, 4 explosive completions across 13 targets on 18 featured snaps. So even though it was not a big part of this offense whatsoever, it did complement things, and it was potent when it was turned to. So, whether it was our dangles or true Texas concepts, you did see a fair amount of angle routes from the backfield of this offense. So the only difference between Texas, which is a middle bender, skinny post combo, and Angler, the other version of Texas, is a corner route. So that's the only difference here. But this is going to be a good example of targeting the middle bender with 2 defenders occupied by our angle. So this guy's going to drop off 1, 2, 3, 4 or coming, and he's going to have middle hook. I want to say this is cover 1, just true cover 1, but can't really tell from this angle. That's just how I am interpreting based on how everything else plays out here. But you'll see he's going to give cushion. He's eyeing the dig to where this guy, our running back, Gibbs, throttles down because he just knows he's covered. But same time, Latu's going to get inside leverage with this guy on skates. And at the end of the day, this is just a middle, high-low towards the middle of the field. If this guy is going to come up, there's going to be no help over top. And if he sags, well, this guy with outside leverage is usually going to lose to a running back running an angle. So fairly simple design, nothing crazy. You don't see it too much anymore in too many offenses, but when it's turned to you and you have a running back that could be a devastated receiver after the catch, it's not a bad idea to feature that every once in a while. So again, you can see the middle guy. Ensure Gibbs throttles down with the other guy on the outside leverage coming off. Right there. See, it's basically 2 versus 1. But because of that, leaves no one to undercut that in-breaker with this linebacker playing off. So strike over the middle, explosive gain. Z Mesh Dagger F Streak. So this is an empty formation way to pair Mesh and Dagger. So Mesh will give you the underneath single high beater. Dagger will give you the 2 deep beater. And when you're behind the chains, Dagger is a fairly consistent play to see from a number of offenses. But from this one, only 11 featured snaps across the season, only 8 targets in our sample. And, only 3 of them worked, but it did gain over 100 yards. So delivering a decent amount of explosive gains, I wanted to at least briefly draw it up. This one's going to go for 39 yards. So you also had levels tray from this offense. So that form of dagger, in addition to cross dagger. And this one wasn't featured too much, but Z mesh. So he's the mesher, and then slot dagger, F streak. And it looks like this is cover 1 from Auburn. We're going to have one middle of the field safety. He's going to be kind of a middle robber. He's going to be a spy. We're only bringing 3, but it looks like everyone else is wrapped up in man coverage. And with that, basically, the dagger concept's going to do what it is designed to do. So he's going to basically be drawn out of position, following this guy across the formation, vice versa with this guy, leaving him locked up with our middle bender. He's going to be driven out, and right away, our point man is going to lose inside leverage, and that's where we're going to go. So a pretty impressive strike from Bryce Young here. So again, not overly featured, but it's a tried and true pattern to turn to when behind the chains. And yeah, that is a very impressive strike. Bryce Young, one of the more accurate mid-range passers within the SEC the last several seasons. So even though he has size concerns heading into the NFL draft, he has been commonly consistent hitting those mid-range intermediate targets. Yankee Shots have overly been faded from Bill O'Brien, but they still show up from time to time within Alabama's offense the last 2 years. This past season, 12 featured snaps, 7 of them used at snap motion, and it did draw eventually 9 targets, with 2 of them going for 20-plus yards. So Yankee Shots, what's the main characteristic? A deep overcross. Most of them, the base form of Yankee is a deep over with a deep post going over top. Now, you also have other varieties. You could just have a straight vert. You can have kind of a post corner. You can have a C corner. You can have outbreaking corner. You can have an additional crosser like that. Pylon concept, crosser concept, whatever you want to call it. But all in all, shot put, Yankee, and crosser were the most common forms. And again, like the at snap motion, 7 snaps use power play action pulling a guard. So we get that on this snap. Max protection. We're going to get the attention of a decent amount of box players. So he's coming, and he's going to be distracted and run, or at least he thinks he's going to have to fill for the running back, so he comes out of the play as well. So it looks like this is going to be cover 1, middle hook, single high safety, everyone else in man coverage. You'll see the safety who's off screen, he'll actually come down to the flat to cover this jet motion, but these guys are going to be locked up with the post. Middle of the field safety, designed to be wrong on the Yankee concept. If he wants to let that inside breaking cross route have middle leverage, of course, the only way to take it away is to scream down and cut it off at the pass. But if doing so, that could leave this deep post one-on-one, potentially having the middle of the field wide open. But you'll see on this rep, he stays back, he caps the post, which gives us a little room to hit our over here. So here comes our jet motion. There comes our power play action. That's the guy coming down for the jet. You can see already in man coverage, he's going to come up to fill this linebacker with everyone else coming. And you can see right there, there's our deep post safety off the screen going to try and cap that. So Bryce Young buys a beat of time and delivers a strike to Latu to walk along the sideline. But even though it wasn't as featured as it was in years past, it still delivered at least a 50% success rate in meaningful minutes, and again, was a decent source of explosive gains when a completion was generated. Whew, we made it through. That was a lot to take in, but I hope you all found that informative, whether you are a casual fan looking to find a little bit more about that offense, or if you're a coach looking for some new ideas. But moving forward, yeah, this Alabama offense is going to have a lot of fresh faces in 2023. You're going to have a new quarterback. You're going to have a new running back. You're going to have a new play caller. things can look completely different this time next year. Of course, I already mentioned Tommy Rees coming from Notre Dame. He should bring a little bit more of a multiple professional look with more tight ends, perhaps more emphasis on the gap scheme to get away from zones, but that remains to be seen until spring ball has concluded. But still, we find ourselves dead middle of the offseason. I want to invite you all still. Just because things aren't going on does not mean you cannot become more informed on your favorite SEC program. So you can see pass charts, concept breakdowns, situational filters to help break out things by route, or if you're a running back, see how many times you were hit behind the line of scrimmage. You can see a lot of advanced stats all in one place. Again, that is secstatcat.com, and I would also like to invite you to smash a follow on this YouTube channel and my Twitter page. Again, until next time, I am Clark Brooks, reminding you all to have a good one.